Originally, I was gonna make a top 20 or maybe a top 10 songs of 2017 list, but I had a hard time ranking them. It just felt so unfair to compare songs which were completely different from completely different genres and rank them against each other. And I know that there is always an element of bias in any kind of reviewing I do. This is pretty much just my opinion. But it still felt very difficult to rank the best songs of the year, so I'm gonna do this a little bit differently. Instead of a list of the best songs ranked from, say, number 20 to number 1, I'm gonna make a mixtape. So, I'm not gonna make a ranked list this year, I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm gonna make a mixtape. And yes, this is a physical tape that exists in my house. Technically, it's a CD I burned a couple of days ago. But instead of listing the songs from, say, worst at number 20 to best at number 1, I'll just list them and analyze them in the order they appear on the mixtape. I did select the songs on the mixtape to be what I think are some of the best songs of the year, but not all the songs that I loved managed to make it on the tape, because I did try to make this a coherent musical project, something you can listen to from front to back and have it be enjoyable, and some of the songs that I considered the best of the year just would have broken up the flow of the project a little too much. For example, the song Leaving LA, which is like a 13-minute ballad by Father John Misty, probably is one of the best songs of the year for me, but it would have just completely interrupted and killed the momentum of the tape. So, to make sure that every song gets its due, I'm gonna list those songs and give a little bit of a commentary on them at the end of the tape once I finish describing each song that actually made it on the tape. I think there are about 7 or 8 of these honorable mentions, we'll call them. When I think of a memoir, I usually think of reading about someone who had an exceptional life, or at least wanted to make their life seem exceptional. Memoirs, they tend to focus on the big dramatic events that shaped someone's life, the things that distinguished their life from the lives of most other people. Like maybe they lost their mother at a young age, maybe they went through a really bitter, contentious divorce. So I was interested when Stephen Merritt was going to release a 50-song memoir with one song for each year of his life, and I was curious to learn about the things that had happened to him, the things that had shaped him. But the more I listened to this album, the more attracted I am to the moments where Stephen Merritt doesn't talk about the big dramatic changes in his life, but the little moments that exemplify who he was at a certain point in time. The songs I'm attracted to on this album pay attention to the small things in our lives that end up shaping who we are, and celebrate those things, instead of focusing on the stuff that makes Stephen Merritt's life superficially distinctive or special or unique in some way. I don't know, I think there's kind of an honest intimacy in letting your audience see who you really were every day as a child, letting them sort of spend time with you at that age, instead of only focusing on the big calamities that happen in your life. Fox and I is one of those songs. It's about the personal relationship he had with John Fox when he was a teenager, how he felt like he knew him and understood him just by listening to the music. And I'm pretty sure that everyone has had that kind of personal-seeming relationship with a musician when they were a teenager, feeling like there's someone else out there who is a creative person who just understands and gets the way you think. And I would expect for this kind of song to have a little bit of self-aggrandizing in it, because, everyone as teenagers tends to think that they're going to be special, they're going to do the thing that no one else in their high school is going to do, that they're going to grow up to be someone different and unique. Instead, this is a celebration of the act of creation as a way to get outside yourself, to express yourself in a way that's not completely tied up in your identity and your personal problems and your own self-consciousness, as so much of life is when you're a teenager. It's a way to get away from all of that and create a world which takes on a life of its own that becomes strange and beautiful and interesting. There is nothing that Stephen Merritt wants less than to have his art be tied up in his identity and limited in that way. As he says, Fox and I, we aren't rock stars. Why would we want to be? And while, yeah, it might seem a little hypocritical or strange that a song about separating personal identity from art ends up on an album that is all about the artist's own life, I don't really think this album is directly about Stephen Merritt's life. It's not a representation of his life the way a normal memoir would represent the life of the author. It's a representation of Stephen Merritt's life in the same way that your dreams represent what you did and felt in a given day. Stephen Merritt is like this machine that transforms personal experiences into art. He takes everything from the messy, crazy, self-conscious world of the everyday and transforms it, puts it in this world that is a little more contained, a little more beautiful and deeply felt. And that's something that anyone can do. It doesn't really depend on how interesting your experiences originally are. It doesn't depend on what your identity is. As he says, anyone can change into that kind of machine. Black or boy, girl or white, dull or very strange. And he shows us, he says, "Come with me." I don't know. A lot of the times when people talk to me about really personal music, what they really mean is music that's confessional. Music that is someone showing a lot of raw emotion. And to me, that's not personal. To me, personal is music that makes you feel like you know someone as a person in their unguarded moments. I would consider a lot of the music on this list personal, but not really that confessional. You can just kind of feel the unguardedness in Dave's voice in this song. Like, it's clear that there's a lot of pain, but it's not affected pain at all. It's just coming to the surface naturally as a result of him singing about this breakup. His voice is this soulful baritone, which actually works really well against this cleaner production with these slightly gospel soul-inspired horn layers. But it's not dignified or staid. The way he's singing is very naturally expressive and even improvisational. He does these little soulful warbles. He's very dynamic. It almost sounds like these are things that he could have practiced singing in the shower. But this all gives me the feeling that this is Dave actively trying to process what he's talking about. He's experimenting with how he's telling the story. This is a song about dealing with feelings after the dissolution of a relationship that wasn't really caused by the actions of either person in that relationship. It just sort of happened inevitably. Feelings changed. It became clear that the relationship wasn't going to work anymore. I feel like a lot of breakup songs tend to deal with like the immediate emotional aftermath of the breakup, where everyone is really hurt and upset and disturbed, and these emotions kind of take over the entire song to the extent that you sometimes don't even really get a sense for who's singing. It could kind of be anyone. It's just someone experiencing intense heartbreak. Whereas this song is basically the opposite of that. It's less a song about dealing with the immediate aftermath of breakup than it is about dealing with the fact that this breakup happened and confronting that and figuring out how you're going to fit that into the narrative of your life. It's about coming to terms with the fact that it really wasn't anyone's fault, that feelings can just change, and as Dave says, love's gonna rot. Love can fade away. And yeah, that might seem melodramatic, but in this song it doesn't. It just sounds like a statement of fact, an explanation for what happened between these two people. Their love rotted. Their love faded away. And this song isn't an attempt to linger in that emotion or convey that hurt as much as it is a way to tell the story of the relationship, figure out what it meant to him, and to move on from it. It's ultimately a healing song. I also just love the kind of playful self-awareness that Dave has about the little social rituals that exist around relationships, the things we do to symbolize our affection towards each other, and the things we do to symbolize how upset we are after a breakup. From the very beginning of the song, their relationship is marked by these kind of symbolic actions. As he says, when he met her, he feels like he could do the things that lovers do, slightly domesticate the truth and write her a song. Things that are all part of the ritual of showing that you're in love with someone in modern day America. And after the breakup, he's doing that again, participating in these rituals to show how upset he is. In this case, he's speeding down the Taconic Parkway listening to Kanye West, while meanwhile, in a completely different part of the city, Amber is doing her own rituals, listening to Tupac and pouring him a fifth of alcohol to try to get over the breakup in her own way. This does not initially seem like a song that's going to be very emotionally stirring. There's no big dramatic instrumental, there's no trembling in Open Mike Eagle's voice, there's no big anthemic chorus. Instead, you get this quirky, pre-programmed percussion sound that clacks in the background. You get Open Mike Eagle rapping cryptically about how it smells like someone boiled a rose. You get these strange, hard to decipher nursery rhyme like lyrics. It feels like the song equivalent of something that you would find in the back of your mom's house, some kind of relic that maybe used to once belong to your grandmother that you don't even really know what it is anymore. It's a strange, raw, idiosyncratic song. This is another one of those Open Mike Eagle songs where all of the action and the drama happens inside the narrator's head, and Open Mike Eagle's brilliance lies in how he depicts everything that this person is thinking and feeling and sensing in every single moment. This song probably only takes place over the span of a few minutes, but I feel like I am feeling every second of that time. It almost makes me vicariously, viscerally nervous because he just portrays the details of anxiety so well. And really, I mean, these lyrics shouldn't be as emotional as they are. The story is, like, almost insultingly simple. A guy goes to a bar with his friends. The bar is the place they feel at home. It's closed. He feels bummed out. They go home. But the way that the song conveys this narrator's paranoia is so incredibly detailed. It's the way that Open Mike Eagle lingers on this very simple, quick scene where the friends hug each other and say goodbye is so indicative of how caught up in the present moment this narrator is, being in that state of nervous, heightened paranoia where you kind of think that everything is symbolic of something more than it actually is. You're feeling the subtext beneath everything, like when he says here that the hugs are just a public display and how they're repeating everything they can say, and the feeling of physical exposure that comes with that emotional exposure. When you are aware of these emotional currents that you can't really control or express very well, you also become aware of your body in space and what you may or may not be conveying to other people through your body. Your body starts feeling weird and exaggerated. I love his comparison of his body parts to different parts of different animals, the elephant nose, the pelican bones, these things that shouldn't really go together. And then the chorus comes along, and it's like the perfect response to the free-floating anxiety that permeates all of the verses. It's like a little incantation that has the power of a children's song. It's easy to memorize, every line rhymes, there are these casual sort of slant rhymes that give it this easy, slightly sloppy feeling, and I like the way Open Mike Eagle raps it. It's fast and breathless, but it's also kind of hypnotic. It has this undeniable rhythm. You can just imagine the narrator chanting this over and over again to bring them back down, make them feel grounded, to get away from their racing thoughts. I also like the weird clacking pre-programmed percussion sounds that propel this beat forward. They're just as awkward and strange and feel just as much like a weird found object as everything else about this song, but they have a kind of learned confidence to them. Like, they're so steady and rhythmic and hypnotic almost that you are going to get into this beat whether you want to or not. It kind of fits with a song that's all about someone trying to get back his confidence and regain his footing. Open Mike Eagle loves to make these incredibly evocative songs which just chronicle the feelings and the sensations that people experience when they feel super vulnerable and sensitive in situations where they're really not supposed to feel vulnerable and sensitive. Like, this is just a few working class guys going to a bar. They want to hang out, but then the bar is closed, so they have to leave. It shouldn't be something that stirs great emotion in people, but sometimes it is, and Open Mike Eagle accepts that. He speaks up for all of those people who feel overly sensitive, which really is everyone at some point in our lives. Now, this may seem weird, but I actually think that in a way, this song is political. This song is Open Mike Eagle standing up for people who are often dismissed or stereotyped or forgotten. Because we don't tend to think of black men in the projects as being people who are sensitive, are nervous, are paranoid day to day about just regular stuff. We think of them as somehow having a higher threshold for pain, like something intense needs to happen in order for them to break down and get emotional. Everyone deserves a representation of people like them just going through the everyday anxieties, the highs and lows of just like living in the world. And for me, Open Mike Eagle has given that representation to a group that doesn't normally get it. For me, that's something worth celebrating. I've been thinking a little bit about how cathartic angsty music is when you're a teenager. You can just go up to your room and put on some Green Day or Linkin Park or Nirvana or whatever angsty music you grew up on and feel like you are experiencing the suffering described in the songs. And when you get to be an adult, that kind of thing doesn't work as much. The angst and the frustration don't go away when you grow up, but you get a little bit more perspective, you get a little bit more distance, you no longer feel like your problems are the most important problems in the world. And that kind of music can start feeling a little bit overdramatic or silly. You need something else. So it's kind of perfect that a band that came of age as one of those angst-filled, nu metal-inspired groups of the early 2000s eventually matured in the same way as we all do and became a synth-pop band. All of the pain and frustration that was just baked into earlier Paramore albums, it's still here. It's just conveyed in a way that, well, it doesn't make me cringe. It's a little bit more mature. It has a little bit more perspective to it. This is an album written by someone who lives with angst and frustration and feelings of guilt rather than breaking down emotionally about those things. There's a nice bass groove on this song, very simple, very hypnotic, stabs of bright guitars, and these awesome sort of tropical feeling flourishes of guitar as well. It's a solid pop song, kind of reminds me of No Doubt, pretty sugary, pretty catchy, but it perfectly captures how people cope with feeling angsty and unmoored a lot of the time, which is by making light of it, by making it into something kind of funny, by acknowledging that other people's problems are bigger than your own. There are so many people I've seen who put on a good face and keep going, when they're really feeling very angsty and frustrated. And all of the things that Hayley Williams says here, her strained, cheerful tone of voice, perfectly captures how it feels to have a conversation with one of those people. The slightly self-deprecating, self-diminishing line, "I don't need nobody's help, I can sabotage me by myself," her saying that she's just a little bit caught in the middle. And while it is bad to repress your feelings, obviously, sometimes making light of something is the only way you can get through it. After Laughter is a very fake it till you make it sort of record, and this is one of the most fake it till you make it kind of songs. It manages to get at the performance of showing emotion while also conveying the strength of that emotion that lies underneath. So if you are feeling a little bit angsty, a little bit adrift, this is probably the song for you. Check it out. This album is called Brutalism, which is both a stark, very functional, kind of ugly style of architecture, and a word for being savage, being brutal. And that pretty much describes this song and this album to a T. Like an early punk track by the Minutemen or Minor Threat, one of those bands that just seem to distill that punk energy down into a science. Their songs feel at once very savage and intense and very tightly controlled and precise. They only last 2 to 3 minutes. They get in, they do the job they want to do, and they get out. And this song is no different. It has a very fast, dirty, propulsive bass line that just sounds like concentrated savagery, and some very fast, furious, and intricate drum work as well. This song is both very tightly controlled and a little bit crazy, unhinged, like it's just going to come unglued and dissolve into chaos at any moment. And the lyrics have that same kind of directness to them. They feel like they're honed for the most intense impact they can possibly have. This is a song about watching your friends suffer, in this case from depression, from mental anguish, and there's really no pussyfooting around this subject. Like, just look at the directness and the brutality, really, of some of these lyrics up here. As far as I can tell, the main theme of this song is that pain is pain, and we can confront it and try to deal with it, but we may never really be able to accept it, because suffering is bad, pain is bad. Maybe it's a good thing to never resign yourself to someone else's suffering or accept someone else's depression as just kind of the status quo. It certainly seems like that's what the narrator is struggling with in this song, and some of these line deliveries really bring home how scared and afraid and insecure this person feels. I mean, just the tremble in the singer's voice when he talks about how his friend wishes he were dead. It's pretty devastating, and I can't say it's not relatable. And I think this song has one of the most subtly devastating endings of any song in 2017. The guitars just descend into chaos and go crazy at the end of the track. They build and build and go faster and faster until they become this sea of just fuzzed out noise. Almost reminds me of white noise in that it is very chaotic, but there's also something kind of empty and peaceful about it. And from this noisy, fuzzed out cloud emerges the lead singer's voice, who just keeps chanting, "Guess this is as far as we go, guess this is as far as we go." Complete with little yeah, 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 yes, reminiscent of like a millennial pop song that seemed to indicate some kind of sense of coming to peace, coming to terms with this situation. And I think all of this does indicate a kind of reconciliation, but a very bittersweet one, because I don't think that all of this is indicating that the narrator has finally come to terms with his friend's pain and is empathizing with him. I think that he's still just as scared and alienated and concerned as he was at the beginning of the song. I think that Instead, it's more of an accepting that you can't accept. It's a confronting of pain while a realizing that it's always going to be something that makes you scared and concerned and disturbed, and there's nothing really you can do about that. It's also, I think, kind of a message to us, the audience, that he cannot say anything to wrap this up nicely, to make us feel better, to somehow make sense of his friend's pain in the grand scheme of things. That pain is just pain, there's no real message, there's no real point to it. In some ways, this is the perfect punk song because it exists to just confront you with something intense and leave you with your own questions, your own emotions, leave you kind of shaken and upset.